Now at 6, a search and rescue operation underway in Maryland.
We advised the entire bridge, the entire Key Bridge in the harbor.
A massive cargo ship crashes into the Francis Scott Key Bridge, sending several vehicles and construction workers into the water.
Our response teams are doing everything in our power to rescue and recover the victims of this collapse.
It is Tuesday night. Brian is off. I'm Rick Williams, and the big story in Action News is the catastrophic bridge collapse in Baltimore. And here's what we know at this hour. Authorities say the bridge remains an active search and rescue site. 6 construction workers who had been fixing potholes on the Francis Scott Key Bridge are still missing. 2 others have been rescued. We know federal investigators have also arrived at the scene. Tonight we have team coverage on the tragedy. Action News' John Paul is looking at bridge safety and how to prevent tragedies. Trish Hartman has the latest from first responders, but we begin with Annie McCormick live in Sparrows Point, Maryland. And Annie, what is the latest from the scene there tonight?
Well, Rick, as you can see here from Sparrows Point, we have a clear view of what remains of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. The Coast Guard, of course, is leading that search and rescue operation at this hour. The priority still remains to find the missing. Dramatic video shows the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse just after 1:30 this morning. A 950-foot shipping vessel en route to Sri Lanka collided with the bridge, causing the destruction in mere minutes.
For every single one of us who are Marylanders, the words that the Key Bridge is gone, it still shakes us, because for 47 years, that's all we've known.
Now the search and rescue operation continues with federal, state, and local authorities in the water and air using sonar technology to assist them. 8 members of a construction crew patching potholes on the bridge overnight went missing. 2 were rescued, 6 remain unaccounted for. Plus, at least 5 vehicles were detected underwater by search crews.
No me siento bien. Ya nadie puede salir a trabajar eso por lo.
Jesus Campos works for Bronner Builders, the company that employs the missing construction workers, and today said he is heartbroken upon hearing names of the missing. The Mayday call from the vessel's crew made it to workers on the bridge who likely prevented more casualties.
Many of the vehicles were stopped before they got onto the bridge, which saved lives in a very, very heroic way.
The bridge, which is part of Interstate 695, crosses the Patapsco River in Baltimore's harbor and carries more than 30,000 vehicles daily. The NTSB will investigate how this happened. Then the Army Corps of Engineers will clear the channel. The port is one of the nation's busiest and critical to import-export commerce. Specifically for automobiles, the ports employ about 15,000 people.
We're going to send all the federal resources they need as we respond to this emergency. And I mean all the federal resources. And we're going to rebuild that port together.
And Rick, the NTSB is on scene. They are the lead investigators. However, they can't even board the vessel yet until the search and rescue operation is completed. For now, reporting live in Sparrows Point, Maryland, Annie McCormick, Channel 6, Action News. Rick.
All right, Annie, thank you. Well, tonight, residents who live near the bridge are recalling the terrifying moment the bridge collapsed early this morning.
It was a very, very loud boom, and then everything started shaking.
It's impacting so many, and they still haven't found people. And then right out back, you just keep looking to see if anything's washing. You know, that's just what you do. You're trying to make sure everybody's okay, and you're hoping that they find everybody.
Families say they're still holding out hope that those still unaccounted for will be found. We know multiple agencies from around the region have stepped in to help, including a Coast Guard team from Atlantic City. Action News reporter Trish Hartman live in Camden with details of the frantic rescue efforts. Trish.
Well, Rick, the U.S. Coast Guard is leading the search. A Coast Guard helicopter out of Atlantic City was dispatched to Maryland today as part of that effort. As of now, Pennsylvania and New Jersey's federal response teams have not been mobilized to help in the search effort in Baltimore, but they say they are ready if needed. Search and rescue teams are desperately searching for at least 6 people unaccounted for after the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed in Baltimore.
If there's one thing I have to say today, it is a note of gratitude. for the extraordinary and courageous work of the first responders, some of whom are in that cold water right now.
The U.S. Coast Guard is working with federal, state, and local agencies to find survivors in the water.
On scene, we currently have 3 small boats. We also have Coast Guard cutter Mako, an 87-foot patrol boat. We have a helicopter from Air Station Atlantic City.
At this point, Pennsylvania Task Force 1 has not been called in to help with the rescue efforts. Captain Ken Pagurek with the Philadelphia Fire Department is the program director for Pennsylvania Task Force 1, which frequently responds to disasters locally and across the country.
Operating in and around collapsed structures like that, obviously there's entanglement issues.
He says there are many challenges with this collapse.
You have dive teams that are working in dark water, cold water. And these are trained professionals that are, conducting these operations.
Prior to joining Task Force 1, members go through hundreds of hours of intensive training, including how to handle collapsed structures and water rescues. He says disasters like this truly test those hours of training.
You can train and you can prepare, but when you're faced with it, that's where you fall back onto your training, your knowledge, your skills, your abilities to be able to accomplish your job as efficiently, as quickly, and safely as possible.
So far, 5 vehicles have been found submerged in the water. 2 workers who were on the bridge at the time of the collapse have been rescued. One of them is still hospitalized. Reporting live in Camden, New Jersey, Trish Hartman, Channel 6 Action News. Rick?
All right, Trish, thank you. Federal investigators have now arrived on scene to investigate if something in the construction of the bridge contributed to the collapse. Well, here in our area, officials say they have implemented safety measures to prevent such tragedies. John Paul is live near the Betsy Ross Bridge in Brysburg with more on that. John.
Yeah, Rick, soon after this happened, we wondered about the safety of our own bridges. Let's take the Betsy Ross, for example. That's where I'm standing right now. And this is very similar to the bridge that collapsed in Baltimore. It was built around the same time, within a few years or so. It's about the same length, too, when you consider the total span. But the Betsy Ross has one key difference, and it's not what's on the bridge, it's what's in the water itself.
We believe that there's almost no probability of a ship being able to get past our protection systems and strike the bridges.
Words of assurance from the CEO of the Delaware River Port Authority after the devastating bridge collapse in Baltimore. The bridges in our area have a protection system surrounding the pier supports to prevent a ship from running into them.
When you talk about the Betsy Ross Bridge, we have concrete dolphins that are protective against ships that will prevent a ship from striking the pier. That's what we have at the Betsy Ross Bridge.
8.5 million vehicles drive across the Betsy Ross Bridge over the Delaware River every year. It's similar in type and length to the Francis Scott Key Bridge, except it has these concrete structures very close to the support pier to prevent a ship from running into it. You can see the circular structures from Drone 6. Now, when you look at video from Baltimore, you don't see those near the piers, something a structural engineering professor at Drexel noticed right away.
Why were there no protection systems around the pier?
Dr. Abe Agayiri analyzes structural collapses. He was surprised that this type of bridge, known as a continuous truss bridge, completely failed.
When something is continuous, it is supposed to be able to at least hang on. What I saw was that once the pier that was supporting that span gave way, the bridge just went down. There was no hesitation.
Of course, that is something the NTSB will be investigating over the days, weeks, and months to come. Now, Rick, I'm told by the Port Authority that all of the bridges along the Delaware do have a protection system in place by those support piers. We're live tonight in Brydesburg. John Paul, Channel 6 Action News. Rick?
All right, John, thank you for that report. By the way, you can get the latest updates on the bridge collapse on our 6 ABC app. And make sure to stay tuned for Action News at 10 tonight and 11 for more live coverage from the scene in Maryland.